Hello, and thank you for tuning in to this video, Our Amazing Community, true insights on how to run a successful mutual aid and prepper community. Before I take you on a tour of our very successful community, for those of you who have not been following me, let me give you some background as to why I am making this video. I'm a child of the 60s, and we were raised with the constant fear porn of nuclear annihilation. That's why, from the age of 12, I became a survivalist, or what they now call a prepper. About 25 years ago, I came to the same conclusion that many great minds have come to that have studied history and the cycles of history, and that conclusion is we are ready for a societal collapse. So I began preparing. I wrote the book, The Art of Urban Survival, which follows the stages of societal collapse, from high crime to natural disasters to corruption and martial law and riots and eventually war. And I began preparing for the eventual collapse of society. But I also did research into history because I wanted to know, what did people in the past do to survive the collapse of their societies? For example, what happened after the collapse of Rome? Or what happened after the collapse of the Qin dynasty in China? What I found was that the best way to survive, the best way for common people to survive the collapse of their society, is to work together in autonomous communities to support each other. So 5 years ago, I began writing a book where I took all my research on what happened in the past and how people were able to work together to survive even the worst disasters. And I've been working on the book ever since, called The Complete Guide to Forming Communities. Then I was persuaded by Joshua Hale from Autonomy University, online university, to create an online course to teach people how to create communities to survive the coming collapse. And the course has been very successful. But I get a lot of emails from people all over the world because of my work and my talks on how to create communities and the need to create communities now, to work together now so that you can survive the next 10 years. I've attracted a lot of attention, and I get emails from people all over the world. And most of the emails are, they cannot form communities. It's not working for them. They've taken my course, they've listened to my podcasts, and despite all that, they can't seem to bring people together to work together. Now, the community I belong to is extremely successful. I must say that I did not found this community. I joined this community about 6 weeks after they started. And I am not the leader of the community. I play no significant role whatsoever. I am just proud to be a contributing member to the community. So Joshua had the idea of, why don't we make some videos where we talk about the real life aspects of how our communities work, so that people will have a better idea of how to form their own communities. So that's why I'm making this video right now. This is going to be the insights into the day-to-day workings of our community and all the things we have managed to accomplish in the just over a year and a half that we have been in operation. So to start, I cannot tell you the name of the community. We have no internet presence whatsoever, no website, no Facebook page, and it wouldn't matter anyways if you knew the name that we operate under, because doing a Google search or any kind of search will turn up no results for our community. We do this on purpose because we are anticipating that during the collapse phase, our governments will turn on us. They always do. I will come out with another video shortly called Know Your Enemy. Spoiler alert, your enemy is your government. And so we keep a low profile. The video I will use in this presentation, a lot of it is going to be pixelated, and that's because it's real video of the real members of our community, but I wanted to pixelate it so that artificial intelligence and facial recognition programs would not be able to identify the members of our community. Again, this is to keep the whole thing on the down low. We don't want people to know who we are. We certainly don't want the government to know who we are. And so we are very quiet about it. Members that join our community first have to be recommended by another community member. And then we take a look at him for a month, him or her, see what they're like at the meetings. We'll have a talk with them, try and get a feel for them. One prerequisite we do have for new members is that they cannot be injected with a poison. You have to be so careful now what you say, but I think you get the idea. None of the members in our community have ever been injected by an experimental medical procedure. And quite frankly, the pandemic was something of a IQ test. Those whose IQs were a little bit higher would have refused, despite all the pressure they put on us to get it. If you did get it, then I'm sorry. We tried to warn you. I tried to warn people. A lot of truth tellers have tried to warn people. But if you still had to get that procedure done, then you can't become a member of our community. Our community meets every week. We are fortunate enough to have a very nice clubhouse on the property of one of our key members. He owns a piece of property. He runs a business on that property. And again, I don't want to tell you what the business is, because then people could guess where we are. But he runs a business, and part of his business involves having a clubhouse on the property. And so he allows us to use it free of charge. And we meet once a week from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. Now, sometimes we'll meet early, or some of us will meet early at 6 o'clock. And this is for specific purposes. We have a number of different teams. For example, we have a medical team, we have a gardening team, we have a security team, we have communications team. And if there is something that we need to discuss among the team members, we'll schedule that for an hour earlier than the regular meeting. And again, we'll meet at the clubhouse and we'll take care of business there. Geography. Our community is spread out across dozens of small towns in a rural area. We are pretty much in the middle of Amish country and Mennonite country. Most of the members in our community either live on a farm now, or were raised on a farm, or grew up in the general vicinity. I live in a small town, 13,000 people, and our community kind of covers all those small towns. We do not have a situation where everybody lives on the same property like a commune. In my writings and in my online course, I suggest that communes always end in disaster. They're unworkable. Here, all the members have their own homes, and they come to the meetings, and it's what they do in between time with their mutual cooperation and helping each other out, which provides the benefits of becoming a member of this community. In my writings and in my course, I recommend that we delegate duties and responsibilities among the community members by designating teams. So the community members can join whichever team they feel is more suitable for them. So we currently have several teams. We have a gardening team or nourishment team. We have a medical team, we have a communications team, we have a security team, and we also have a political team. So what I'd like to do is go through the different teams and tell you everything that we have accomplished in the past year and a half. We'll start with the gardening team. The gardening team consists of several members that are farmers and horticulturalists and gardeners that have expert knowledge on gardening. And we received permission from the same gentleman that owns the clubhouse to use his front yard to grow a garden. We created a garden that's about 60 feet by 80 feet. We tilled the soil, created rows, and we planted numerous vegetables. Members of the gardening team volunteer their time to hoe the soil, to plant the seeds, to water the seeds, to pick the weeds, and then at the end of the season to pick the produce. Now the produce that is produced by this garden is immense. We get a lot of vegetables out of this garden. It's a big garden, but it's not that much work because we have 8 people volunteering to work on it. At one of the meetings, we might get an announcement that says, it's been very dry this week. Can anybody come over tomorrow and water the garden? And how about the day after tomorrow? Can someone else come over and water it? Or we need to pick back some of the weeds. Who can volunteer a couple of hours on the weekend? And we always have people volunteering, and they come out and they do the work. And it has produced a ton of vegetables, and it's all natural, organic. We use heirloom seeds. The nourishment team is doing really wonderful work. Also, part of the nourishment team is a bag and box co-op. Now, the way this works is members of the community can go online to a website that lists all the produce that's available. This website is run by a farmer's food distribution center. The only thing you need to do to buy from them is have a minimum order of $500. And with over 100 members of our community, raising $500 to buy food and vegetables is an easy thing to do. So what they will do is they'll go to the website, they'll see what's available, and they have everything. They have not just produce, but they also have chicken and pork and beef and cheese and honey. They have just about everything you can get from a grocery store they have at this food distribution outlet. And so the members will put in their order with one of the other members in our nourishment team who runs the bag and box co-op. She takes the orders. She takes the money for the orders. Typically, it's about $50 per member of the community. You can order more if you want, but usually it's a $50 box. And she does that once every 2 weeks. So she takes the orders, collects the money, and then she places the order, which will now be above the $500 minimum, with the distribution outlet, and they will pick the order, and what they do is they actually drive it to your house. So she would have the order driven to her house, and then all the other members in the community will come over to her house and pick up their box. So it'll be like, well, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, drop by at her house and bring your bags and your boxes and pick up your order. The cost of this is a fraction of what you would pay at the grocery store, a fraction. In a sense, it's also what you would call a buying group. Now, I go into detail in the book and in the course what a buying group is. But a buying group or a food co-op is simply where people pool their money together, and you buy at a discount. A couple of times in the past year, we would order chickens to be raised specifically for our community from one of the local farmers. We would order 100 chickens at a time, and the farmer would raise the chickens, and they're all free-range chickens, and no additives added to the meal, no antibiotics, no steroids. The first time they ordered 100 chickens, The community processed the chickens themselves, which means they killed them and skinned them. We borrowed one of our community members' farm sheds, and everybody showed up there to kill all these chickens. But sometimes that's what you have to do. Now, the last time we ordered 100 chickens, we made a deal with the farmer that he would kill the chickens and process them. So we didn't go through the mess. It was a little bit more per chicken to have the farmer do the work, but it was worth it. And so then everybody would order how many chickens they wanted. Every member of the community could put in an order, 1 chicken, 2 chickens, 10 chickens. They would get the chickens after they had been raised and had grown to an appropriate size. And they would get the chickens and they'd take them home and maybe put them in the freezer or maybe cook them up right away. We are able to access chickens in addition to all the produce that we grow ourselves, in addition to all the produce and other grocery items that we order from the distribution center. The other thing that we do, and you got to keep this on the lowdown because it's illegal, but we buy whole milk from one of the Amish farmers. Can't say who it is, and it all has to be done in secret. Can you believe that? You have to go undercover to buy whole milk. Anyway, so we also buy our whole milk from one of the farmers. In addition, we also buy fresh honey from one of the beekeepers, and we have numerous beekeepers on the various farms that surround us. The other thing our nourishment team does is, because we have so many expert gardeners, and they help other members of the community to grow their own backyard garden. My friend's garden has 50 vegetables and herbs and trees, fruit trees. Unbelievable how much food she is growing in a fairly small garden. She also volunteers her time to help members of the community with their garden. Often at the meetings, people from the community will bring to the front desk seedlings. Here are some seedlings. Anybody wants it? Here are some saplings. So they share their knowledge of gardening. Several members of the nourishment team have a lot of expertise in wild herbs and wild foods. From time to time, I think maybe 2-3 times a year, they will schedule a walk. We'll all meet at one of the parks, and we'll go for a walk through the forest, and they'll point out all the food that you can pick directly from the environment, and they'll point out all the medicinal herbs that grow wild in your own neighborhood. These also go to supplement our food supplies. The other thing, too, is many of the members raise chickens not for eating, but for the eggs. They raise chickens for the eggs, but they also raise quails for the eggs. And they're really tiny eggs, but you have to put enough of them in a fry pan, and it'll make you an omelet. We often have members of the community come to a meeting and say, I have 6 dozen eggs, $3 a carton for anybody who wants them. And so we have another source of protein from many of the members that keep chickens. Also, some of the members of the community keep rabbits, cooking rabbits. So another source of protein. I personally don't want to kill the bunnies and eat them, but I know that when society collapses and there are no grocery stores anymore, and the food chain has been blocked or destroyed, and you are hungry, at that time you will be ready to eat a rabbit. The other thing our community does is we have like an ongoing educational program. So at the meetings, usually one of the community members will present a short workshop on different facets. So we've had workshops on how to ferment mead, how to bake, how to cook, how to preserve food, how to can food. And these workshops will be held right during the meeting. And so we now, in addition to becoming self-sufficient food-wise, we also learn how to prepare the food and cook it and preserve it for long-term storage. Because we're out in the rural areas and we're out in farm country, we take full advantage of being close to the farmers. And many of our community members are good friends with the farmers in our area. A lot of them are farmers themselves. Maintaining close connections and friendships with the local farmers is an important aspect in our survival plan, because once it all goes down, there's only one type of people that are going to be able to produce any kind of food, and that's your local farmer. In my online course and in my writings, I always recommend for people to become friends with the farmers. Go to the farmers market, meet them, get to know them, and support them by buying the produce. Oh, I almost forgot. Another thing that we do is a variation on Meals on Wheels. Now, Meals on Wheels typically are charitable organizations run out of a church, and what they do is they cook meals every day and deliver them to people that are housebound, seniors, people with disabilities, and they provide them a hot meal every day. We don't do it on a regular basis, but we do it on a per case basis. So several times this year we've had members that did get sick and did have to go to the hospital, and when they got home they were unable to go grocery shopping and unable to cook food for themselves. So what happened was, at one of the meetings, at one of the regular meetings, the request would go out, Mrs. So-and-so, she's not feeling good, she can't cook for herself. Who would like to bring her a meal? Who would like to bring her a meal on Monday? Let's see a show of hands. And, usually there was 5, 6 people raised their hands. Who can bring her a meal on Tuesday? Again, 5, 6 people raised their hands. Who can bring her a meal on Wednesday? And so on. So we were able to provide several of our members with a week's worth of food and deliver it to their homes. And again, all of this is free. Everybody volunteers their time, volunteers some of their groceries, and to prepare the meal. And they do that for free. And it's like a Meals on Wheels. But again, it's a way to support each other. If you're in trouble and you're hungry, somebody will come over and feed you. It's unbelievable. I mean, the generosity of this community is really overwhelming. So I think that's about it for the nourishment team, which is a lot. So just to recap, we have our own communal gardens, which produces a lot of food. Individual members have their own backyard garden, and with the assistance of our experts in the garden team, they're able to produce food for themselves. We also source chickens and rabbits from local farmers. We buy in bulk and at a great discount. We also buy in bulk through a food co-op from the local farmers market and farmers distribution centers, which again is a huge savings in food costs. We have access to honey and fresh eggs. Many of us are now experts in harvesting food and medicine from the local environment. So in terms of food self-sufficiency, we're just about there. We really have taken care of our personal needs. And this is the most important right now, because when society collapses, no power, then the grocery stores are gone. If there's problems with the supply chain, then where are you going to get your food from? People will starve. And because we are now already under a communist political system, don't think that you're in a democracy. You're not. We are absolutely under a communist system. And what the communists have always done throughout history is starve their populations. Probably 80 million plus people have starved under the communism in the last 100 years. So it's really important that you're able to feed yourself. Feed yourself without relying on grocery stores, without relying on the government, without relying on food trucks to stock the local markets. You're going to have to do that for yourself. And so a garden team, or I call it a nourishment team, is essential for any community, because if you're starving, nothing else matters. You won't be able to accomplish anything other than trying to eat the bark off of trees or eat grass, as happened so many times throughout history. Food self-sufficiency is key. The next team I'd like to talk about is our medical team. Again, because we believe that when the society collapses, we will no longer have access to hospitals and doctors and medicines and ambulances. All of that's going to go. You're going to have to take care of your own medical needs by yourself. And that's why we have a medical team. We have 4 nurses. Now, for those who know anything about the medical establishment, the nurses are the ones that do all the work in a hospital. They know more about illness and how to treat illness and how to look after patients than most doctors do. So we got 4 nurses. We've got 2 herbalists. These ladies are brilliant. They know how to pick the wild herbs from the local environment. They know how to make tinctures and extracts and teas, and how to use these herbs to cure and treat a wide variety of illnesses. They're brilliant at it. So if you're sick, don't get a prescription. Our medical team will prescribe some herbs for you, either in a tincture form or as an extract or as a tea or as something you just need to eat. We also have on our medical team 2 former medics, and then of course yours truly. I am a former instructor for St. John's Ambulance and Red Cross. So between the 2 other first responders and myself, we've got a pretty good handle on treating emergencies, emergency care, triage, and along with the nurses and the herbalists, we have a lot of skills and talent available to help people that have come down with illness and injury. And finally, we also have a Chinese medicine doctor. So that's our medical team. And what the medical team has done, well, it's quite remarkable. In the ongoing learning program that we have, I have conducted 4 workshops on first aid and emergency medicine. Myself and the other 2 first responders would teach the course, and we cover everything that you would need to know for emergency medicine. Not only do we have a good medical team, but our medical team trains the rest of the community. And again, like everything we do, it's free. So anybody that in our community that wants to brush up on their first aid skills, you're welcome to come to the workshop. We always have a good time. And the more people we have that are trained in emergency medicine, the better it is for everyone. There is a tragedy, a disaster. We have a lot of people that have the proper skills that can go out and help people and make a real difference. In addition to the first aid workshops, we had the nurses come out and give workshops on home nursing and home care. This is where you've got somebody that got sick, and now you have to look after them in your home and what to do and how to take care of them. So we've got that part of it covered too. The other thing the medical team has done is they've put together first aid kits. We started off with a list of items we thought would make a good first aid kit, and we distributed that list to the members so that everybody can build a reasonable first aid kit for their own home. The next stage was to build up robust first aid kits with a lot more supplies and equipment in them, and we put together 3 of those kits. Now, each one of those kits has about $1,000 worth of equipment and supplies in them. And these kits are distributed throughout the county at different locations, the homes of other members of the medical team. And one of these kits is available within 10 miles of every member in our community. So the idea is, if you get sick or injured during the collapse, and there are no ambulances and doctors and hospitals available, then you make your way to one of the members' homes, and there they will have enough equipment, and there will be somebody there that has enough experience that they can treat your injuries and look after you. So in this way, we were able to take care of our own medical needs to a large degree. Now, if there's serious injuries or there's very serious illnesses that we can't treat or look after, well, that might be a problem. We're doing our best to make sure we have everything we need. We've got suture kits, we have IV kits, we have burn dressings, we have all kinds of emergency medicines, antibiotics. And what we're thinking about doing in the future is buying some more medical equipment that's a little bit more expensive. For example, I'd like to have an ultrasound machine so that we can, yes, check on pregnancies, but we can also look into fractures and see what kind of a fracture we're dealing with, if it's a compound fracture or if it's a green stick fracture, because it will determine how you treat that injury. Having an ultrasound machine is one way to diagnose injuries that you wouldn't otherwise be able to diagnose. One of the other pieces of equipment we'd like to get is an automatic electronic defibrillator. The only problem is you need to have that close by to someone when they're having a heart attack, and it might not be that useful if they have to travel 10 miles to get to one of our first aid stations. So that's what our medical team has been able to accomplish in the last 18 months. And it's really pretty impressive that we have all this equipment and supplies and training so that we're ready if there is a big disaster. We'll be able to look after ourselves to the best of our ability. And so our next team is the communications team. The first thing we did was encourage every member of the community to buy a ham radio. We all bought the Baofeng radio. Then the team leader of our communications team brought in his laptop and he programmed all the radios so that when we turn on the radio, we are automatically tuned in to a frequency that we can use. So we started off with a GMRS frequency, a General Mobile Radio Service frequency, that you're able to use without a ham radio license. And we taught everybody on how to use that. And then we printed out topographical maps of our county, and we plotted where all the members lived in the county, and we drew circles around their location with a 5-mile radius so that we could see who we could contact with the ham radio using a GMRS frequency. Then what we did, and we've been doing ever since, is we have a weekly radio check. So on Sunday nights, we turn on our radios at a set time, and we will call each other. Now, we've already assigned everybody that has a radio with a call sign that's unique to our community, and we don't have to use our real names. Every Sunday, we turn on the radio, and we see whom we can contact within our community. And it turns out that we can communicate to everyone in the community, even though they're spread out over 20, 30 miles, by relaying messages from one radio to another until we reach all the way across the county. Now, the other great thing about communities is that you have people that know people. And one of the people that another member of the community knows is a ham radio instructor and someone who can license you for your ham radio license. Now, just 2 months ago, about 30 members of our community all got their ham radio license. So now we switched to a ham radio frequency, and we also were able to tap into 3 different repeaters within our area. And so once again, we all brought in our radios, and the team leader for our communications team programmed all the radios so that now, in addition to the GMRS frequencies that we already communicate with, we now can automatically tap in to the ham radio frequencies, and we can also access the repeaters. By accessing the repeaters, you can then communicate to people all over the world. Not only is it easy to communicate with other members of the community within our geographical area, but we can actually communicate with people on the other side of the planet. In addition, several of our team members went out and bought 50-watt base stations. So we have about 6 members, maybe more, that all have base stations, and they have a far greater range. And so anywhere where we live in our county, we can access them with our simple handheld ham radio. So I can get a hold of one of the guys that has a base station. If I need to, I can get into a repeater, and I can communicate with him and other people in the community, and even communicate with people around the world. So our communications team is like top-notch. Because if the power goes out and the internet goes down and there are no cell phones and there is no radio broadcasts, how are you going to communicate with people? How are you going to know what's going on in the world at large if you have no access to information? By setting up our own communications network, and it's a great network so far. We've been testing it. Like I said, every Sunday we test the network, we talk to each other. We now have a complete network that we can communicate instantly with all our team members, and we can communicate with people all around the world. Now, we already have a protocol in place, which is something many of the preppers communities also have, and that is the 333 protocol, which means that if the power goes out, if there's some emergency, some catastrophe, then what you do is you turn on your ham radio and you listen for 3 minutes. Then every 3 hours, you turn it on again and you listen for 3 minutes. This way you don't use up your batteries, and also you will be able to hear any information that you need to hear as soon as the power goes out. So the communications team is very professional, very effective, and when our society collapses, we'll be able to know what's going on. We'll be able to communicate with each other. We'll be able to gather information from people all over the world. What's the situation like in South Arkansas? What's the situation like in Alaska? What's the situation like in Alberta? We'll be able to talk to people and find out what they're going through, what's happening in the world, and we can take appropriate measures to deal with any threats that are around us. The final team is the security team. The security team consists of members that have had previous military and or law enforcement experience. We all have firearms, and we have some experience on how to use them. We haven't done a whole lot with the security team. Now, we have a sister community that's nearby us and that we cooperate with on various activities, such as the first aid courses. They come to my first aid courses, and they come to our barbecues and potluck dinners. But they have a security team that practice a little bit more than our security team does. But what is important to know is that if there is problems, and the kind of problems I foresee are roving gangs of looters, What I think might happen when society collapses is that all the gangs that are in the cities will start to spread out into the countryside looking for food. This is typically what happens during a societal crash. The gangs, once the food runs out in the cities, they know that the farmers out in the country probably have food, and they'll come out into the countryside to loot them and rob them and possibly murder them. And so our security team is designed to offer protection for our individual members that live on farms in the surrounding area. And because they are all part of the communications team, if a local member feels threatened or sees trouble brewing, he can just get on the radio, call up the security team, say, there's 20 guys walking up the road, I don't like the looks of them, and we can send out our security team to take a look and offer some protection. Now we've got about 4 or 5 guys here in the location where I'm at, so we've got a squad. But a squad is a very good and a very effective fighting unit. So we have a squad of guys we can send out with AR-15s and pistols and offer resistance to bands of looters. Now, our security team is not set up, nor do we intend to battle government forces or military. We are not prepared for any kind of military engagements, and I always tell people, if you're thinking about taking on the military, then you are making a big mistake. You're not going to win against the military. But a ragtag band of bandits and looters, they can easily be driven off with a determined group of men with firearms. So that's our security team. Oh, and our security team was able to get a hold of some wholesale cattle prods. Now here in Canada, tasers are illegal, but there's a loophole that you can own a taser provided it's more than 10 inches long, which means it's a cattle prod. Again, according to Canadian law, you're not allowed to use it for self-defense, but if we're without rule of law, if we are in a collapse scenario, then having a taser, well, we're going to use them if we need to. So a lot of the members, even though they're not on the security team and they don't own firearms, they're nevertheless armed with a taser, with a cattle prod style taser that also functions as a flashlight. So again, that's part of what our security team is able to do. In addition, I teach workshops because, you know me, I'm a former martial arts instructor. I've been studying martial arts for over 45 years. So I offer training in martial arts and self-defense. More recently is my workshop on cane fighting. A walking cane is an excellent weapon. So again, I teach fellow community members on how to use a cane for self-defense. And since a lot of them are, getting up there in years, they're in their 50s, 60s, some in their 70s, and they already walk with a cane, well, now I teach them how to turn that cane into a deadly weapon. So again, that's all part of the security team umbrella. The next team we should talk about is the homeschooling team. We have 4 families with a total of 16 children, and the mothers work together to homeschool their children. I think this is one of the most important things people can do, is get your kids out of the public school. Public schools are poison. They destroy the minds of children. And everybody knows that children that are homeschooled are far smarter and far more self-reliant than children that went to public school. So they get together and they form their own homeschooling co-op. And they designate certain homes for certain lessons at certain times of the week and who's going to teach them. And they all know each other and they can trust each other. And they take care of their own kids. They handle the education for their kids. And it's the best thing you can do if you have children and get them out of school. The big problem with people homeschooling is they usually think, well, mom has to stay home all day and teach the kids. Well, yeah, if you don't have a community, then that's the only alternative you have. But if you do have a community, then what you do is you share the teaching requirements between you and 4 or 5 other moms. And then we alternate between the different parents' homes to have classes there. And so far, it's very successful, and it still gives the mothers plenty of free time. They're not run off their butts trying to teach their own kids, but instead they share the duties amongst themselves. And it's very successful. And I'm very proud of the homeschooling team. The other thing our community does is once a month we have a barter night. This takes place an hour before our regular meeting once a month, and we call it market night. And people that have something to sell and something to trade will bring it on market night. I've been able to use copies of my books to buy colloidal silver, medicinal extracts, eggs, and other items from other members that bring their produce or items that they want to barter and sell, and so we exchange goods. This is the initial stages of forming our own financial community. Eventually, as things progress, and look at what's happening now with the banks taking everybody's money and shutting down bank accounts because they don't like your politics, we have to separate ourselves from the financial system that we're currently operating in because they are out to screw us, and there's going to be nothing we can do about it. But instead, we start already very simple, kind of primitive. We have one night a month where we bring our goods and we trade and we barter. And so this is the beginning stages of forming a separate financial economy, separate from the government, separate from the banks, separate from the money. And the worse things get, and during a time of complete collapse, that will become a major part of what our community does, is form our own financial system where we can buy, sell, and trade using barter. But this is what we have to think about for the future, starting our own microeconomies separate from the rest of the world. The other thing I want to talk about is how we manage to maintain cohesiveness among the community members. And we have done that through numerous community activities. For example, we had a picnic last summer with live music. Many members of our community are musicians, including yours truly. They get together and they play live music at the picnic. We have a barbecue, we have potluck. Everybody brings their kids. We have 50 kids running around. Usually it's held at one of the farms nearby, one of the members' farms. So you got lots of grass and ponds and farm animals, and the kids are going crazy. They're having a great time. And we've got good food and we've got live music. So we've done that, I think, twice now. The other thing we do is about 4 times a year we'll have a potluck dinner. The last time we had a potluck dinner, we also had a big fireplace where we made stone soup. Stone soup is a metaphor. It's a story from Europe about a man that comes into a village and no one has any food and everybody's hungry, but what he does is get everybody to chip in a little something, a potato here, a piece of beef there, some onions here, and everything is thrown into a big pot and cooked up, and then everybody gets to have a big bowl of soup from the stone soup. Another member of our community owns one of these country roadhouse restaurants. She is an amazing baker. She makes cakes and pastries, and her restaurant serves like the best old-time food. You know, when you were a kid and your parents took you out to the countryside and you came across one of these roadhouse restaurants with smoked brisket and barbecued pork ribs and hamburgers where It's a real hamburger, not the crap you get at McDonald's or Burger King. I mean, a big hamburger with all the fixings. All the bread is homemade bread and homemade French fries. I mean, just amazing food. And she's a member of our community. And to support her restaurant, once every month, once every 2 months, we'll just all go to the restaurant and have dinner there to support her, but also for ourselves, so that we can get together again and talk and enjoy a great meal. So that's another thing that we do is, we have dinners out together as a community. Last Christmas, we had a big Christmas dinner for members of our community. So what we did was we had a vote at one of the meetings. Should we take some money from the kitty, because we have a kitty, and should we buy 3 turkeys from, again, local farmers, healthy, free-range turkeys? 3 members of the community volunteered to cook one of the turkeys each, and they brought the turkey, and again, potluck. Everybody brought, some food to add to it, potatoes and gravy and corn on the cob, and I, of course, made my now famous Papa Stefano's pasta supremo. So I bring my pasta salad, everybody brings some food, and we had 3 turkeys. And they brought them to the basement of one of the local churches. A lot of these churches, they have a kitchen down there in the basement, and they have a big hall down there for wedding receptions and things like that. So again, we got the space for free in the basement of one of the local churches in one of the little towns here. And they brought the turkeys in and all the food, and then we had 80 members of our community, and they all bring their kids, and everybody had a lot of food, and then we took photos by the Christmas tree, and it was a wonderful time. Again, it's really important to do these types of things in your community, to get together for dinner, to get together for picnics, to get together for barbecues, and to get together for special occasions like Christmas dinner. That turkey was awesome. And there was so much turkey left over that everybody could take home a doggy bag, and I got a doggy bag. I ate that turkey for 4 days. It was wonderful. It really was wonderful to be with people that care about you, that you've worked together with, that you're now getting to know. You're sharing a food, you're sharing dinner, you're sharing traditions. Because Christmas is our tradition, folks. So let's talk about finances. Our community does not charge membership fees. Me, personally, I think $20 a month per member is not a lot of money to ask for what we do, and that money can go to pay for the things that we need to buy for the community. But the other members aren't interested in a monthly fee, so there are no monthly fees. Also, there's no charge for any of the events. No charge for a Christmas dinner, no charge for the first aid workshops, no charge for programming your radio. Everything we do is free for all the members. So how do we pay for things? Well, we've done a few things. We've had, for example, a garage sale. One of the community members has a nice house here in town with a big garage and a big backyard. So everybody brought things to sell at the garage sale. Because it's a small town, members of our community approached the manager of the local grocery store and said, we're doing a fundraiser for our community. Would the grocery store like to donate hamburgers, hot dogs, and buns? And they did. And so we cooked up the hamburgers and the hot dogs, and it was voluntary donation. We didn't charge for it, but, if you can slip a couple of bucks in the jar, that would be great. And so we were able to raise some money through the hot dogs and hamburger sales and the garage sale. But to be honest with you, this wasn't enough money. So the other thing that we do is we simply pass the hat around. For example, to start to fund the first aid supplies that we needed to distribute throughout the community, we said, how are we gonna do this? Should we have another garage sale? And people didn't think that would raise enough money. So they said, well, should we pass the hat around? And everybody said, yeah. So we passed the hat around, and we raised $1,400. One of our members was moving back to the East Coast, to Nova Scotia. They had bought an off-grid farmhouse there, and they were moving, and we were sad to see them go. But before they went, we had a potluck dinner, again at one of the members' houses. Everybody came over, we had a big dinner, and again, we passed the hat around, and we were able to raise $1,600 to help them on their journey to the East Coast, to help them pay for the gas and the hotel nights that they have to spend on the road. And they were so grateful and so happy for the money, and we were happy to help out and pass the hat around. We also had a couple of speakers come to speak to our community. We had a speaker from Frontline Nurses, which is a community here in Ontario, or Canada, I believe. These are nurses that were speaking out against the mandatory medical experiments that the government was trying to force on everybody, and especially on the nurses. They were speaking out and drawing attention from the government for their efforts. And of course, the government shut down their bank accounts and started persecuting them. And so we had one of their speakers come to one of our meetings. Again, we passed around the hat. We raised $1,400 for her and for that organization. So that's how we've been funding things, just out of the generosity of the individual members. So members of our community are very generous. I'll give you a little anecdote. A month ago, somebody asked me if I could print out the sheets that I had prepared. You can download these questionnaires from my website, self-assessment questionnaires, that will help you to determine what kind of team you would be most suited for. So I said, I'd like to print them out, but I don't have a printer. Well, the next week when I came to the meeting, up on the table in front, there was a printer. One of the members had heard that I did not have a printer, and they brought one, an extra one that they had, and they brought it in and they gave it to me. You know, several of us are musicians. Recently, one of our members got married, and she wanted people to play at her wedding, and she would sing. She's a great singer. And so we wanted to provide some live music for the wedding. And so I contacted the other people in the community that I knew were musicians. And I mean, we got professional people here, Philharmonic grade musicians, cellists and violinists and guitar players and bass players. And we had, you know, a couple of rehearsals. We'd meet at one of the farmhouses, sit there in the porch and play and rehearse. And what a great feeling it is, you know, to be out on a warm summer evening under the stars and play music together. It's so uplifting. The last thing I think I should cover is, why is this community so successful? So I've thought about this long and hard. There's a couple of factors that go into it. Number one, our average age is probably about 55. Because we're more mature, many of us can still remember when we had freedom, way back when. People were a lot more free back then than they are now. People now have no idea the kind of freedoms we used to have. They're also, because they're an older generation, we weren't bubble wrap kids. We were pretty rugged when we were kids. To have that old-time self-reliance and self-sufficiency is still ingrained in us. And I think that goes a long way to helping us function as a mutual aid society. The other factor is the location. We're in a rural area. I have tried for 15 years to form this type of community when I lived in Toronto, and it was an absolute failure. I was not able to form anything. I wasn't able to get anybody to work together on anything at all. And I tried everything. to form communities. I went to meetup groups. I put ads in the local papers, advertised on the internet, Facebook and Craigslist, and put up a website. And I even taught Tai Chi for free in the park once a week, thinking that if I can get people to come out to a Tai Chi class, I can, start to work them into a mutual aid community. And so I was unable to establish any kind of community in the city. And I think that's a key point. I think you really have to be in a small town. I think you really have to be out in the country. Country people have been raised more with the idea of helping each other out than anybody born and raised in the city. They already have the concept of being part of a community and helping each other during times of need. The whole concept of a mutual aid and prepper community is not so far-fetched to people that were born and raised in rural areas. So I really think that's probably the most important point of forming a mutual aid and prepper community, is that you can't do it in the big city. So I think that's probably the biggest factor on why this community, where I am now, is so successful. So I hope this talk has helped you with some ideas on forming a community. I can't tell you how proud I am and how much I feel I belong to this community. The people here really care about me, and we actually help each other all the time. All the time. They're great. And it is a pleasure to go to the meetings. It's a pleasure to go to the events, to the picnics, to the dinners, to the workshops. If you can be a part of this community, it will improve your life tremendously, and it will help you to survive what's coming. So that's all I can think of for now on why this is working and why so many other communities don't work. It's because you're in the wrong location. You got to go back to the country and away from the big cities. So thank you for listening to my talk about my amazing community. And I hope you've gotten some pointers, and I hope you're encouraged to keep going. I know a lot of people have given up. I hear it all the time. I can't get anywhere. I can't find anybody that will work with me. I can't find anybody that has the same mentality or mindset. It's hopeless. I give up. Well, the only thing I can say is keep trying. Even if you can only find 2 other people that will work with you as a micro community, that's already a good start. You can't do it all by yourself, and you won't be able to survive what's coming all by yourself. Get 1 other family. Get 2 other families. Join forces. Keep trying. Keep working at it. Because if you can establish the kind of community we have here, you will be so much happier. You will feel safe knowing that you've got 60 people, talented people, skilled people that's got your back. They'll help you. You help them. We all help each other. And then we can get through this. We can get through whatever the government wants to throw at us. If you want to know more about forming communities, go to my website, formingcommunities.com. I have a lot of information on the website. And you can also find out about my online course. So again, thank you all for listening for so long. And I'm wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.